Good morning, you're welcome to the Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. My name is Rume Paulson. It's Monday, the 3rd of March, 2025. Happy new month to you. I hope March has been off to a great start for you. First, would like to sincerely apologize for starting this late. It was due to some technical difficulties, but we're here now. So let's make the best of what we can right now on the Breakfast Show. And this morning, we'll be discussing the fact that FIRS tax revenue surpasses oil as Nigeria's main income source. Much later in the show, we'll be discussing youth empowerment in digital economy. We'll also be taking global stories, some global stories that has made it this morning as our top trending stories. And the first one says, stakeholders urge National Assembly to prioritize public input in tax bills. Stakeholders across various sectors have called on the National Assembly to consider public concerns before passing the proposed tax reform bills. During the recently concluded public hearing, individuals, private organizations, and professional bodies submitted memos and expressed reservations about the bills. The major point of contention was the fear that the lawmakers might sideline public input in favor of political interests. Prominent voices, including Senior Advocate of Nigeria Mike Uzekome and constitutional lawyer Abdul Mahmood, warned against rubber stamping the bills without addressing the economic realities of Nigerians. The tax reform bills, Nigeria Tax Bill 2024, Nigeria Tax Administration Bill, Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill, and the Joint Revenue Board, which is another establishment bill, were transmitted by the President Tinubu in October 2024, following the recommendations of the Presidential Task Force on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. While the Senate passed the bill swiftly for a second reading, the House of Representatives demanded further consultations. A compromise was later reached proposing a new VAT revenue sharing formula that prioritizes fairness. However, stakeholders remain concerned about the planned periodic VAT increment and the perceived influence of governors on the legislative process. Despite reassurances from the chairman of the House of Committee on Finance, James Faleke, that all public submissions would be reviewed, skepticism persists. Observers argue that the dominance of the ruling party politics and governors' interests could undermine the credibility of the public hearing. Civil society groups and professional bodies have been urged to intensify pressure on lawmakers to ensure that the final version of the bill reflects the economic aspirations of the people rather than political expediency. I love the fact that everyone right now is coming to talk about this, because this is something that definitely that would affect us one way or another, right? And the truth is, for anything that needs to be passed, you need to have public hearings. So invite all of the stakeholders, let us know what we're doing. We can only, make this certain changes if we work together and if we want it to be for the benefit of Nigerians. So civil society organizations, other stakeholders, this is where we need the voices to be amplified, because, I mean, these are great ideas, bills that are being passed. But the truth is, if we do not fix the economic reality here in Nigeria right now, especially for the common man, how are we supposed to, make this money or generate this revenue from the tax bills? And of course, right now, as we know it, it's now the new income, for Nigeria, even more than oil, because that's something we'll be discussing much later in the show. So we need people to amplify their voices and see what we can do. Maybe there might be a few changes to be made to the reform bills. We'll see about that, but it has to be to the benefit of Nigerians, and that's something that we need to prioritize right now. Another top trending story says Udenwa claims money influences election outcomes in Nigeria. Former governor of Imo State, Achike Udenwa, has alleged that politicians with enough money can manipulate Nigeria's electoral process to secure victories. Speaking on Edmond Obilo's State Affairs podcast, Udenwa expressed concern that Nigerians no longer prioritize the character or track record of politicians seeking public office. He claimed that wealthy politicians could influence the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, security agencies, and even voters, turning election into transactional affairs. When asked if politicians could buy INEC, the police, the army, and voters, Udenwa boldly responded, in quote, "You can buy everybody." He warned that the trend of monetizing election threatens the emergence of credible leaders in Nigeria. And he called for urgent reforms to curb the practice and restore integrity to the electoral system. Addressing the ongoing crisis within the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Udenwa accused the ruling All Progressive Congress, APC, of fueling internal division in the opposition party. While acknowledging PDP's internal problems, he insisted that external forces were playing a significant role in destabilizing the party. Despite the challenges, he expressed confidence that the PDP would overcome its crisis and remain a formidable opposition force. Well, that's what we love to hear for PDP, because the ruling party has to, be strong enough to ensure that you're putting checks and balances for the opposition party has to be strong enough to ensure that you're putting checks and balances for the ruling party. But the main conversation here is the fact that anybody can be bought, and we've turned, our elections to transactional affairs. I mean, during the election times, you see even women, people on the streets, they're selling their votes for as low as 5,000 naira. And it's quite sad, because that money is going to be spent in that time. And what happens to your future? What happens to the next 4 years? Now I know that, corruption has really raised its ugly head, when it comes to the Nigerian political space. But it's important that we try to vote people of integrity. And the only way we can do that is to be people of integrity ourselves and say, no, I'm not going to sell my vote. If you're an army official, if you're an INEC official, whatever it is, you're going to always prioritize the people first before anything else, before your little pocket that you're trying to put money in. So it's important that we all stay neutral and let the people's voices be heard in the polls. So not buying everybody, not making it into transactional affairs. And I hope that, we will start to vote in credible leaders with integrity, and that can transform Nigeria into that progressive state that we want. All right. Right now, we're going to be discussing our first hot topic, which is FIRS tax revenue surpasses oil as Nigeria's main income source. The Federal Inland Revenue, FIRS, has emerged as Nigeria's top revenue generator, contributing to over 70% of the funds shared by the federal, state, and local governments in 2024. This marks a shift from reliance on crude oil, positioning tax revenue as the country's new economic backbone. President Bola Tinubu's economic reforms, including fuel subsidy removal and exchange rate unification, played a vital role in boosting non-oil revenue. The reforms, alongside FIRS customer-friendly strategies and technology-driven tax processes, increased taxpayers' enrollment by 25.3% in 2024. FIRS under Zak Adediji's leadership aims to generate about 25.2 trillion naira in 2025, while raising the tax to GDP ratio to 18%. This achievement strengthens Nigeria's journey towards economic diversification and fiscal stability. Joining us this morning is Segun Shopitan, is an economist, to discuss this topic right now. Good morning, Mr. Shopitan.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Happy New Month to you. We're in the month of March now.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. All right, so we're discussing the fact that, our tax reforms are already, making great way for us, because we're seeing the fact that it's now the new income generator in Nigeria compared to oil. That was the way we made money for a long time, for many, many years. Now, for the 2024 report, we're seeing that tax has climbed up, and that's, that's a huge 25.3%. What is your reaction to this?
Part of the economy, and I think that this report is lending credence to the fact that there is some sort of policy action from the government that is beginning to see us raking more revenues from non-oil sources. The FIRS, being the largest contributor to the overall revenues of the government, as high as 70%, relative to other revenue generating bodies like the Customs Service, the NNPC, interestingly, and the DPR, the successor to the DPR, being the others. The FIRS now is the most significant contributor to the government revenues, and I think this is very good. I think this is coming off the back of some of the things that you said when you were reading the report. Digitalization of our tax collection processes, more collaboration between the different agencies that are collecting revenues, which is resulting in bringing more people into the tax net. I think what we're seeing is that more people are beginning to pay taxes as against what used to obtain. And I think that digitalization and the use of technology will also remove significantly revenue leakages, where, in the past, where you had practices where tax collection agents or government cut deals with, taxpayers to the detriment of the government, resulting in very significant leakages. Maybe we're beginning to see some of these things as gradually recede. So this is a move in the right direction, and I think that one would hope that we'll see more of this. We're still nowhere near where we ought to be, but at least we're moving in the right direction, and this is commendable.
Certain concerns about the tax reforms, because you said obviously more people are paying taxes right now, even though the Senate president had said that about 50% of Nigerians do not pay taxes. And with the new tax reform bills, they're obviously trying to ensure that everybody pays taxes, right? But the concerns right now are, how do we balance growth? Because of course we want to be able to diversify our in revenue generation, right? It shouldn't just be dependent on oil alone. So how do we balance growth and then obviously the economic realities of Nigeria where they don't have enough?
So when the Senate president says that enough people are not paying taxes is correct, and that's why I said we are nowhere near where we ought to be. The reality in Nigeria today is that very few people actually pay taxes. So my saying that we have more people in the tax net does not negate the fact that only a few people are still paying taxes.
Yeah.
And I mean taxes on income, whether it's your salary or profits as a private small business or your salaries as an employee in an organization. There are still too many people that are getting away without paying their fair share to the development of the country, and that is something that we've got to fix. But having said that, the question regarding growth is one that has to be taken in context, within the context of the impact of excessive taxation on disposable income and on purchasing power, and what that will do to the ability to attract and accrete private capital and investments that will result in growth, infrastructure development, and general growth within the economy. So it's a balancing act. Typically all over the world, government uses tax policies to stimulate growth or sometimes to rein in inflation. Tariffs and taxes are part of the fiscal instrument that you use sometimes to take liquidity out of the system and all of that. So what we need to see from this government is a balance. It's a balance where, yes, you need to improve the revenues of the government aggressively, but you have to do it in a manner that does not reduce purchasing power from the people at the lower echelons of the economic pyramid. So the bottom 60%, because they are the ones that drive consumption. Just by the sheer volumes, by the number of people in that group, every 10 naira, every 1,000 or every 10,000 naira that they spend accumulates into big money. You don't want to negatively impact their ability to spend. So what we need to do is to come up with smart tax policies and smart tax rates that will ensure that the higher up on that ladder that you go, the more taxes you pay. It's the way it's done in all civilized societies, all the societies that we benchmark ourselves against. It's almost as if you are punished for being wealthy. So you have people that pay as much as 45% of their revenues in some countries just because they're rich, whilst people at the bottom of the pyramid pay nothing or pay very little. So we need to look at creative ideas like that to ensure that we increase government revenues, but we don't impoverish people that are already more than poor enough.
Fantastic. So I mean, you're already talking about the different people in the spectrum, right? When it comes to being taxpayers, some people have a lot, some people do not. But a lot of Nigerians probably fall into this bracket whereby they feel taxes are burdensome. And the reason why they say that is because, you know, we're not really seeing the dividends. Maybe most times when you're paying taxes is because of development of the nation. So you're probably going to be seeing constructions of roads, or, you know, the healthcare system, the education is better. So it's almost like I'm paying for this, but of course I'm getting something in return. But in Nigeria, most times it seems like you're paying all of those taxes and you're not getting anything in return. So how is the FIRS, how do you think they need to go about ensuring that there is no tax evasion from people? So the enforcement of the law that you have to pay your taxes, but then still being able to gain the public trust that this time around, especially in President Tinubu's administration, you will get to see the dividends of you paying your taxes.
I think there's very little that the FIS can do with regards to the public trust. Their own job is to gather the taxes. Their own job is to, run awareness campaigns that will ensure that taxpayers are aware of their responsibility and their obligation, and the fact that it's a legal obligation and failure to pay taxes is a criminal offense. The FIS needs to ramp up the messaging on that and also provide the mechanisms to ensure that everybody can be brought into the net, no matter what your income level is. I've always said that, I just said now that the richer should pay more, the poorer should pay less, and maybe you will fall within a bracket where you pay nothing. But generally speaking, the most efficient tax systems find a way to ensure that everybody pays something. So the FIS needs to do that and ensure, because if we do that, you will see dramatic increases in our tax revenue numbers. Having said that, the flip side of that conversation, what you bring up, is something that the FIS has no power over. It's the public trust issue, the accountability issues, the fact that people will be more eager and more willing to pay their taxes when they see the proceeds of those taxes affecting their lives directly.
Exactly.
When they see, for example, that electricity, is improving year on year because government is spending money in that area. What's the reason for the failure of electricity, for example? It's transmission. We as we speak today, generating capacity is somewhere around 15,000 megawatts, which is not great, but it's 3 times what we're actually capable of transmitting, about 5,000 megawatts, and what we're capable of distributing. And the transmission infrastructure is government that will improve that. So if the private, ordinary Nigerian sees government spending money heavily on power, if every time they go out, the country, the entire environment around them looks like a construction site, you see roads that are constantly being built. As they're finishing on this one, they're moving to the next one. You see, maybe hospital and school infrastructure constantly coming up all around you. Then you will see what government is doing for you with the money you are paying, and you will happily, maybe nobody's ever happy to pay taxes, but at least you will, grudgingly say, well, at least I can see what they're doing with it and pay. So that is something that the government, on the side of the executive in particular, needs to fix. We need to see more benefits from the taxes that are being paid. The subsidy issue, just to chip that in, the subsidy removal thing is an indirect taxation. Nigerians are paying more for petrol so that government can spend less on subsidizing it, which makes revenue available to government. So indirectly, Nigerians, the payment obligations have been shifted to Nigerians, while government can have more money to spend. So the question is, in the last 2 years, where is the money gone?
Exactly.
Where is the commensurate developmental spending that was promised as an outcome of subsidies? So those are the kind of things I'm talking about. If Nigerians have begun to see clear evidence that the subsidy removal is resulting in spending in social infrastructure, then the complaints will reduce. They will still be there. People will still complain about subsidy removal. People will still complain about taxes, but they will see what the money is being used for, and they will be more willing to pay. So that has to be addressed by the government as quickly as possible.
Exactly. I totally agree with you because, I mean, right now we're paying subsidy, but if our refineries were working, you know, we would probably get that product cheaper. And of course, the revenue that you're already getting from taxes, you're putting it to good use. We need a lot in Nigeria, from education to healthcare to infrastructure, electricity, so many things. But I think it's important that we start to look at them as projects. Okay, you know what, this is what we're doing right now, and we move for it. As we get more money, this is where we're putting it. But let's talk about multiple taxation, because that's something that we've seen so far in the past. You are hearing of, you know, FIRS, LIRS, so many, you know, taxes that you have to pay, plus VAT, consumption tax, a lot, right? How do you think with these tax reform bills that they're obviously trying to put in now, seeing that they are making a lot of money from taxes, because this is a good thing and it would get better. But with the tax reform bills, how do you think they can simplify all of this whereby Nigerians don't have to pay multiple taxation?
I mean, look, the easiest way to deal with this is to simply decentralize the country. We say we're a federal republic. I think that if we actually play that out and we become a federal republic in every regard, then things like this will go away. The reason we're having this multiple taxation problem is there's a lot of confusion across the tiers of government, because the flow of money is upwards. It's from local government to the state government to the federal government. Everybody gathers these monies, and you're supposed to put it together into the federal
take it to the center.
Federation account. Federation account, right? And then we share downwards. Now, the Constitution provides certain taxes that are supposed to be collected by the state government and certain taxes that are supposed to be collected by the federal government, and then somewhere in between that, the local government also has, you know, ones that the laws allow them to collect. There usually are overlaps now in how those things are done. So I think that if the solution to this whole problems with our tax administration system, and that's why I feel that the tax laws that have been pushed to the National Assembly is being considered at the moment, is a fantastic idea, but has not gone far enough. I think we need to reverse the revenue flow cycle. We need to allow the local government and the state governments to own the things that are in their territory, tax everything in their territory, and then contribute a small percentage of whatever they've collected to the federation, so that the federation can then administer the shared services, you know, that we all need, you know, national security issues, border control issues, you know, and stuff like that. What we're doing now is the opposite. You know, everybody collects, sends everything to the federal government, and then we share it. So this sharing culture is the reason we're seeing a lot of multiplicity, because everybody wants to collect and see what they can also collect for themselves, you know, that they don't have to send to the center. So I think that the issue of fiscal federalism will probably speak to this issue more efficiently. The efforts by the Taiwo Idele Committee to have some sort of engagement with state governments, you know, and maybe some local governments, having a joint tax board, you know, and all of that, it's all well and good, but you can't compel, you know, organs or tiers of government that have been empowered by the Constitution to collect certain taxes. You can't stop them from doing so. You can only appeal for them to cooperate with you so that you can align those taxes and remove the multiplicity of taxation that people are paying. So you have to go beyond wanting to appeal, wanting to develop some sort of consensus, to providing a mechanism that just makes it impossible or unnecessary for multiple taxation to exist. And I think that the answer to that is fiscal federalism. Just reverse the flow. Let everything stay where it's being gathered, contribute a small percentage to the center, and you will see that multiple taxation as a problem will pretty much disappear.
Okay, so right now what they're looking at is about 25.3 or 25.2 trillion naira, right? And I think our budget is just about 54 trillion naira. So, of course, this is almost going to take or simulate at least half of the budget. How do you think, or what measures do you think, the FIRS can do, because they're the tax collectors, to ensure that they meet this goal? And, of course, we now have enough money to ensure that we have development in Nigeria.
So the first thing to quickly remember is that the money collected by the FIRS doesn't belong to the federal government alone. It's still going to be shared. So that money goes in the federation account, and then the FAC allocation committee meets, and then they share the money. So what typically accrues to the federal government is likely less than half of what is collected by the FIRS, and slightly more than half of what is collected by the other revenue collecting agencies. So at the end of the day, that's why you have such a huge deficit, even in this 2025 budget. You have 54 trillion naira as your budget, and your revenue expectation is somewhere around 19 trillion. Your deficit is still is too heavy, right? So I think that clearly, as I've alluded to, and I've said on several other platforms and fora, and a lot of other experts have spoken to, we are not generating enough revenues as a country. We are completely underperforming our potential significantly. We shouldn't be talking of a 54 trillion naira budget and be celebrating. It's too small. We should be budgeting, our budget, if you change it to dollars, this year's budget at the current exchange rate is about $36 billion. That's peanuts. Convert that to per capita, it's about $150 per head for the entire year. South Africa budgets about $6,600 per capita. It's what we're doing. By the way, as a percentage of GDP as well, South Africa's budget is 109% of their GDP. Nigeria's budget is 10% of our GDP. So we're grossly underperforming in terms of revenue generation, and that's why I said we're not doing enough. It's a great thing that non-oil taxes have increased the way this report says, but we have to do a whole lot more with regards to generating revenues. And what we're doing now, if we're going to see development, the government simply doesn't have enough money to spend on the badly needed development initiatives that we need to see in the country. So we need to get more creative with what we're going to do to unlock the potential, grow the economy, so that taxpayers can increase and people that can make more money so that they can pay more taxes. It's a whole lot of interplaying forces, this conversation.
All right, so it's great that obviously we're having something like this whereby, we're generating revenue through taxes, but what other means? And does this mean that, everybody just leaves the oil? Because before now, it used to be agriculture, right? And then when the oil boom came, everybody abandoned agriculture and, moved over to oil. Now that, tax generation is here, is this something that we're going to just quickly move and forget the oil? And what other ways can we generate revenue? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about taxing the people. It's about ensuring that we're generating revenue as a country, which can now sustain us and ensure that our nation is developed. So what should we be looking at right now? What other measures, aside, taxes?
I think that's a brilliant question, Rume. And first of all, oil will not be abandoned. Nobody abandons oil, not even Saudi Arabia. What other countries are doing is to recognize that oil is a dying sector as an energy source. In 30, 40, 50 years from now, it will represent a far smaller percentage of the entire energy mix of the world than it currently does. It's still dominating the energy mix right now. I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm absolutely certain we're talking 50, 60, maybe 70% at the moment. We recognize that is going to reduce significantly over the next 2, 3, 4 decades. So we do need to start looking away from it, and it's a good thing that we are moving away from it. But it will continue to be there, but we need to do more in other areas. Now, talking about other revenue sources, I think that one of the things that we haven't done is to unlock, look, we have a lot of potential. Solid minerals sector, for example, the kind of solid mineral deposits that we have, I've had conversations with players in that industry who say that our solid mineral deposits across the entire country, the revenues that are available there is about 5-6 up to 10 times what we have in oil.
Wow.
And that if we were serious and we develop strong policy framework around solid minerals alone, you cannot outperform revenues from the oil sector by multiples, right? That's solid minerals alone. What about tourism, Rume? I mean, look, Nigeria is a beautiful country. We've got so many wonderful sites that foreigners would love to come and look at. But we have failed time and time again to provide a framework for private capital to develop those tourism raw resources, those raw beautiful places that we have, into resorts that can attract revenues from abroad, foreign currency revenues now, not just
and
local taxes.
There's the challenge with security as well. Because
Absolutely.
of course, if we're talking
Absolutely.
tourism, we need the nation to be secure enough for people to come in.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And that's a part of the conversation. It's one of the things that we need to fix. You know, this perennial battle with bandits and all of that has to be dealt with and stamped out for good. Look, there's a place in Kaduna, I love talking about it, Kajuru Castle. It's in Kajuru local government and somewhere in Kaduna State. When we finish this show, please Google it. You will think you are looking at a medieval Spanish place. The castle is beautiful, it's brilliant. And people used to go there, tourists used to go there 10 years ago, thereabouts. You can't, the place is a bedrock of bandits right now. So that has to be addressed. So there's tourism revenues from tourism. There's the solid minerals. There are assets that the government currently holds that is loaded with locked value that we can unlock and earn, either privatize, sell off, earn signature bonuses. There are licenses we can issue in so many sectors of this economy that will bring revenues to the government and unlock potential in the economy. There's so much that can be done. The president created a blue economy, marine and blue economy ministry, but then goes ahead and budgets only 150 billion naira to it in this current budget. Meaning that it's just there. They're not going to do anything with it. That is another sector that can unlock massive revenues for the government, in terms of licenses, in terms of signature bonuses, and all of that. So there's so much that we can do beyond taxes, but we just need to see some articulate thinking, behind all of it.
Thank you so much for that. And I mean, that's definitely what we need. Different sources of income, just diversify it, and whatever comes in, you're able to use it to the benefit of the people. This is where we have to wrap it up right now. Thank you so much for coming. Oh, by the way, I have Googled it, Kajuru Castle. It's beautiful. And I think a lot of people definitely need to visit that, right? And that's what we need, the tourism sector to really ramp up and ensure that, we're safe and people can come and explore what Nigeria has to offer. Segun, I want to say thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day.
You too, sir. Right, so we've been speaking with Segun Shopitan. He's an economist, and we've just been looking at the fact that FIRS tax revenue surpasses oil as Nigeria's new income generator. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing the digital economy and what President Tinubu has to do with that. Please stay with us.